Okay, so I am going to read you what I have sent to the news. And here we go. A year ago, excuse me, my phone just went off. Okay. A year ago Easter, my life changed forever. I rented an office from a man named Michael Feldman in Las Vegas, Nevada. We got into a fight over him fixing a broken lock on my office door the first day I moved in. He set his property manager, Mike, to start intimidating and stalking me. Mike, unbeknownst to me, was an active member of the Black Panthers. Every day, he and his gang would stand outside my office door and intimidate clients, thus making it impossible for me to earn money. I filed a restraining order against Mike to keep him and his gang from ruining my business. This made Michael Feldman and his father irate. They own a company called Samson Equities and are very wealthy. In retaliation to my restraining order, the Feldmans hired an investigation company by the name of Elite Investigations to make my life a living hell. I had cops pulling me over on the regular for no reason. I had big black trucks chasing my 10-year-old daughter and myself everywhere I went, trying to run me off the road, us off the road. I moved office locations. The investigation company sent thugs to my work who would pose as clients and physically attack me. The investigation company would lie in wait for me at the places I did my shopping and harass and make false complaints to the shops and get me banned from frequenting them. My house was broken into on several occasions, and these animals would wash their genitals with my soap. At least once a week, I was greeted at my bathtub with long foreign pubic hairs embedded on my soap. I have evidence of all of this. The investigation company hired a woman called Carolyn Pecorella, who lived in my neighborhood, to purposely wait in her car and try to get me in a head-on collision with her. I ran up on the grass when she tried to plow into my car. She is a paralegal. She was hired to hurt me. She and I got into a verbal altercation when she attempted to get me into an accident. A few days later, I got a restraining order she had filed, presided over by Judge Gibson, saying all sorts of untrue things. I never even knew that there was a hearing. I started contacting Mr. Wolfson, the district attorney of Las Vegas. I repeatedly went to the police station to beg for help. My cries fell on deaf ears. The attacks against me grew in frequency and violence. My neighbor was paid to be involved in the targeting of me. Her name is Georgina. She started threatening me by saying that my daughter was going to be taken. I asked her on what grounds. She had nothing to say, but I took her threat seriously because I knew she spoke with the investigators. I watched her do it. About 3 months into this hellish nightmare, I got a knock on my door. A detective Roulette from Henderson, Nevada is at my doorstep with a 250-page arrest warrant for terrorism from New York FBI. This is in Las Vegas. A New York terror warrant. Okay, this is how shady this has been. And totally involves the FBI. Do you know what I mean? I was in contact with the military advisor at the Las Vegas Review-Journal, Keith Rogers. I told Detective Roulette if he didn't leave immediately, I was contacting the LVRJ, and he ran away. I went down the next morning to the Henderson police station and was raising hell. The cops covered for Detective Roulette and told me he didn't try to arrest me. They had me go to a little substation to write my complaint away from the eyes of witnesses. I contacted the then chief of police in Henderson, his name is Todd, and started telling him everything that was going on. My cries fell on deaf ears. I grew afraid to leave my house because I was constantly being driven off the road and stalked with greater and greater aggression. After 4 months of behavior, and on my daughter's 3rd day of 5th grade at Pinecrest Elementary School this year, I was almost killed by one of the hired hunters on my way home from dropping my daughter at school. That was the last straw. I was terrified I would be killed, and as a single mother with no family, I feared for my daughter would be placed in foster care in Las Vegas. I could not allow that to happen. I packed my car with what little I could take and took my daughter and dog and fled Las Vegas in the middle of the night in fear of our lives. Eden, my daughter, and I stayed in Branson, Missouri for a few days after we fled Las Vegas. We almost died the day after we stayed at a hotel there. I can find out the name. I'll remember it. The hired cops and feds, I believe, had placed a tire bomb on my front tire. The tire blew up, and Eden and I thankfully were unharmed in the ensuing aftermath from the blowout on the interstate. I called my State Farm agent to have a tow truck come out. The person that arrived at the tow truck, his name Doyle Ellis. We both inspected the front tire. I saw the plastic device with wires hanging out from the refuse of the exploded tire bomb. So did the tow truck driver, Doyle Ellis. I asked him what it was, and he lied and said it was a tire weight. Later on, I have it on text that he did say that he knew that it was a tire bomb, but that he did not know who had placed it. I said to him, but you know it was the police, and he would not contact me further. My daughter and I, thankfully, were unharmed in this incident. After a few days in the hotel in Branson, Missouri, I called my sister Kelly Gargasz, having a total cow. I begged her to take my daughter, dog, and myself into her home in Ohio and explain that all of our lives were in danger. At this point, I didn't realize that all of my attackers were bribed police and federal agents. I thought it was bribed bounty hunters, the mafia, trying to destroy and kill me. She agreed to give us a safe refuge. I drove for our lives to Columbus, Ohio. I met Kelly at a restaurant with my daughter, and at that point, oh, and they were trying to throw a drug charge on me in Branson, Missouri, too. This guy tried to buy drugs from me, and then he was, like, accusing me of being a drug dealer. I was like, okay, I'm telling you, anyways, back to my thing. I met Kelly at a restaurant with my daughter, and at that point, Kelly said she would put Eden in her safe house, but I would be expected to go to a hotel room with our poodle so that her family would not be endangered from my predicament. I understood and agreed to her terms. She took Eden and I went to the hotel with the dog. I never knew my sister that well. We had only met 2 times previously to this incident and did not grow up together. Unbeknownst to me, the Franklin County Sheriff's Office had been in touch with Kelly and was pressuring her to abduct my daughter. I noticed something was wrong with Kelly in 3 days. She was behaving horribly to me. She didn't want me to speak to my daughter and was saying really nasty things. This escalated in 16 days. We got into a huge fight, and I went to the school my daughter is enrolled in. I believe it's Olentangy Middle School in Olentangy, Ohio, like near Powell, to take my child back to the hotel with me. The school officers would not allow me to take my daughter. 2 huge officers cornered me in a room and were extremely aggressive. I was extremely scared. I had the incident on video. Oh, you can see it on my channel. You can tell I'm scared. The officer walked out of the room with my driver's license. After 15 minutes of waiting, I walked out of the room. I saw the 2 officers with a 3rd officer. They were all surrounding a desk with a phone on speaker talking to Franklin County District Attorney Ron O'Brien. They were scheming on how to Baker Act me. I had done nothing to warrant incarceration for being mentally incompetent. You can look at the video. I then knew I would not be getting Eden and that I had better leave the school or I was going to be incarcerated. I walked out of the school without saying a word. I drove back to the weekly hotel I was staying at and started really freaking out about my situation. I called the police and told them my daughter was being illegally kept from me. The crisis unit at Franklin County Police Station met with me at a gas station. They asked for Eden to be allowed to stay with my sister. I absolutely refused due to her continuously increasingly dangerous behavior around me and the fact that she and I were just at each other's throats and we just hated each other. You know, I was like, it's over. I was made to go to Franklin County Family Services. Eden and Kelly met me at the facility, and Eden was behaving in a manner that I have never seen. In 16 days, it was like she was another child. She was calling me terrible names and being horrible. I was absolutely distraught. That night, Family Services told me Eden was not going with my sister or myself, and I watched my sister walk out the front door at the center, very upset without my daughter. It was all an act. I was relieved that Eden would no longer be staying with someone that was so obviously saying horrible things about me to my daughter. Family Services told me to come back the next morning at 9:30 a.m. I showed up at Family Services the next morning and the center pretended not to have Eden and that the entire situation had never occurred and that I was insane. Okay? That's true. I started telling the head secretary that I would call the police if they didn't produce my daughter. After 30 minutes and a lot of whispering, they did admit to taking Eden into custody. I was informed by my caseworker, Amber Stevens, that Eden would not be coming home with me and to go back to the hotel to wait to be served with court papers to begin the fight of custody with my daughter. I demanded to know where my daughter was being held. They refused to tell me and said I was making up the story about being stalked and was crazy and that I would have to prove my mental fitness before I could retain custody. I started crying and left. I was served papers for court. I showed up in court and had lawyers appointed for my case. It was decided by the judge that Eden would not be staying with my sister while this situation was being worked out. I stayed in Ohio for 3 weeks not knowing if my daughter was safe or not, calling frantically Family Services every day. No one would get back to me. I was greeted at the facility when I finally did get a meeting with my daughter. Finally, I was granted a visit at Family Services with my daughter. I was greeted at the facility by a police officer who handed me a restraining order filed by my sister that allowed no contact with my daughter, my sister, or her family. Kelly Gargasz, my sister, had made up a story that I had gone to her house dressed in military wear trying to kidnap my daughter. I have never even been to Kelly's house, much less done what I was accused of. After receiving the restraining order, I was brought into a room where my daughter was waiting with the counselor to monitor our visit. Eden told me she had been staying with my sister the entire time. That's when I finally understood that it wasn't the mafia or bounty hunters that were hired by the investigation company, that it was indeed the state agency, police and sheriffs, and FBI agencies that had been assisting on the destruction of my child and I's lives. While in Ohio, the same situation that occurred with the police and sheriffs in Las Vegas began to occur there. The cops kept me out of hotels, stalked my car, had employees at the club I worked videotape me,